everybody, and welcome to Ask a Pro. I am really excited to welcome Arthur Meyer. Did I say that correct?
That's fine. Meyer, Mayer, either
Mayer.
one. So
Arthur Mayer, I think that's the way it's supposed to be, who is a general contractor. He has, if you've seen some of the posts that I was doing earlier, probably had one of the best sort of descriptions of what goes into pricing an ADU, an accessory dwelling unit. And on today's episode, which is going to be a little bit longer, typically these are 60 minutes, but Arthur has agreed to go 90, maybe in a little bit longer, depending on how many people we have participating in questions, or if I run out of them, which I don't think I'm going to run out of questions for somebody who really knows what's involved in quoting, bidding, building, and finishing an accessory dwelling unit. Welcome, Arthur.
thank you for having me. I'm glad to be here and glad to participate.
Well, I have to say, first of all, thank you very much, because I know social media can be sometimes a rabbit hole. And I don't know how many months ago that you did, the common questions people ask about ADUs and how to know if my bid is good. And I was really impressed, and that's what kind of made me want to reach out to you. And I know that you're busy, but I wanted to dive into these things because that's such a common question on social media. It's a common question that I get. And I know that we were talking a moment ago that being able to answer the question on what is an ADU cost involves so many things. From me, on my perspective as a manufactured home dealer and a provider of prefab components, is a little bit different than having to do kind of a stick from ground up, a detached ADU. And that is also different than doing a garage conversion ADU. And we see those types all over the place. And so I kind of want to talk about a detached ADU, so something that's not attached to the home, and it is not a garage conversion. And I'll use myself as an example, because we built a 734 square foot, one bedroom, one bath for my father-in-law. And there were a lot of things that I thought I knew, but then when I was given a 300 line Excel spreadsheet and told to fill it out, that's when I was like, you got to be kidding me. And it was a little bit overwhelming. And I just said, just give me some builder grade finishes, because that's going to hit my per square foot price that you had bid me, or what the contractor bid me, not you, but the contract. And I quickly found out that builder grade was not what I wanted. And we quickly began the climb up the cost ladder of going to higher end finishes for our faucets, to our countertops, to our HVAC system. And we decided to go with stucco finish, and we wanted the Santa Barbara, which, as you know, Santa Barbara is like a 4-layer, month-long plus, application, and it's really one of the more expensive types of sidings. But
Yeah.
I know I'm just kind of rambling on because I'm just like, there's just so much to get to, but I wanted to just kind of, from a 30,000 foot in the air, share with people who are not in the business as much as if you can, that are not in the business and they're just starting out, and they want to know they want to try to figure out the best way to get a price on building a detached ADU. Start with some recommendations or your thoughts. I'd appreciate it.
It's definitely the heavy question that people ask is what's this going to cost me? And I think it's important that people know, and I've actually I'm happy to share it with you, and you could share it with your audience. Really pertinent questions that you should be asking your contract. And this is good for contractors too, because there's a lot of contractors that are bidding jobs, and there's a lot of detail left out in what's involved. And when I hear your story, I can reflect to a lot of customers, maybe they just want basic stuff. Well, when you realize you're spending thousands and thousands of dollars to build this, well, okay, now that I'm spending all this money, maybe I want that higher end flooring, or I want that special vanity I found on Wayfair, or
Right.
what I want a rain head in my shower now. I don't want just one shower head. And that's kind of the process sometimes people go through. And what's important is someone that's going to show you what the intricate details are, because it's not so much just the finishes you have, because I've had ADUs I've built that are smaller, but the plumbing costs more than ADUs that are bigger and the plumbing costs less. So when you talk about the non-finishing, what I call the rough construction, where you're, we got to get your plumbing there, we got to get your electrical there, there may be more involved on your property than what could be expected. So the first thing that I always recommend to people, if you want a meaningful quote, now, if you just want a rough idea, I mean, I'm sure there's contractors out there that'll say, hey, it'll range from this amount of square foot to this amount of square foot. But if you want a really meaningful quote, there's a lot of things that need to go into it. Number one is, I always recommend to people, get a set of architectural plans. Because then we can do material takeoffs. We can figure out what type of lumber is being used. Really good architects will do plumbing isometrics. They'll show you where the plumbing is going to be ran to. And some cities require it, like city of Corona required plumbing isometrics for their ADUs. I did a garage conversion there. There's things you should know about your existing house too, especially if you're tying into your existing plumbing lines. For example, is your water line size big enough to tie into? If you're adding another bathroom or another 2 bathrooms, you may need to upgrade your main water service. If it's a 3/4 inch, you may need, but new houses have 1 or 1 1/4 inch.
Yeah, we had to do that. We had to upgrade our water line, our water main, and they came out and made it bigger.
Sure. So, and don't want to overwhelm people, because if someone says, what does this cost? I mean, I can literally ask 100 questions on, hey, let me get you the price, but hey, let me ask you all these things. But these are important things that you need to be aware of. This is not something that is just, there's a blanket price that works for everyone.
And I think that that's the part, that the message that I hope that if you're, and thank you, if you're here with us live, I see that we have a good number of people that are on. So whether you're watching it or you're listening to it, thank you. And if you are watching a recording, you can always kind of put questions in wherever this is going to be posted or featured, and we'll try to get back to you on it. Is what Arthur is talking about, is there's when things that are being involved, and you touched on one of them, is the set of plans. So I heard that, and I've heard that from a lot of people, and I asked that question, do you have a set of plans? Well, no, I don't. And that is a really big deal, because a set of plans can be as simple as going to, if you're in, let's say, the city of San Jose or San Diego, or you're in a jurisdiction that has a pre-approved plan set program for ADUs. That means that the architect has basically come up with the bulk of it. They haven't put it on your property to kind of see what your setbacks are going to be, and they don't know what the utilities are going to look like on your property. As Arthur was just mentioning, do you need a water meter upgrade? But having a set of plans, and when I mentioned a moment ago, it's a big deal, because these things just, you don't go online and find them. They're designed by architects, and those can cost, $10,000 to $30,000. And that's a big line item. But the importance, and what Arthur was just talking about, is the material schedules, where the architect will list them. So he's going to be able to price them much more effectively, because he's going to know almost exactly what is going to be required to build that ADU. Did I say that right?
Yeah. So, and it's great for do-it-yourselfers and people that want to be owner builders, because you're going to need that anyways, because a concrete contractor is not going to know until he looks at your footing details. I did one in Rancho Cucamonga, and they allowed 12-inch deep footings. But I did one in Fontana, and the footing details, because it was a high wind zone, called for 24-inch deep footings. And if any contractor on this call, or any concrete contractor, has ever dug in Fontana or those areas, I like to say it's like 10% dirt and 80-90% boulder. And so difference in price, right? If I'm digging in nice soft soil, no problem. If I'm digging in Boulder City, then it's going to cost more to get all that out. And there's more concrete involved in 24-inch depth versus 12. So, those set of architect plans, and you go, if you're really serious about building one, and take those architect sets, go to the city, get a stamp on exactly what's needed, you're going to get a lot more accurate proposal, because I mean, if you ask for, that's in the word estimate, it's just an estimate. It's not may not be as accurate as you like. If you want it as accurate as you want, then you need to have a detailed set of plans. So a contractor can look at that and say, okay, this is the depth of the footings. This is our point of connections for the plumbing. The main lines are fine, or they need to be upgraded. And, we're trenching through concrete, or we're trenching through soil, maybe to prevent cutting the driveway, because you don't want your driveway cut. We need to consider boring through this and consider that cost. And again, I know I'm saying a bunch of stuff, and I'm not trying to overwhelm people, but these are very important things, and this is all part of the ADU. And we're not even talking finishes yet. We're talking just getting your plumbing in there, or get your electrical in there. And I mean, I've seen boxes that are just need to be upgraded.
And we're just talking, what you're mentioning are just the utility connections. And I think that that's one thing I want to kind of point out. And as we spend some time today talking about these things, they're overarching kind of ideas. One of them that you mentioned a moment ago are the rough ends, which is kind of getting those components together within the ADU itself. But then how do you have that ADU placed on the property? And then how do you get that the water line, the sewer line, gas if you still can, and have all those things run to it? And then what do you have in the way? And that's one thing that you don't hear a lot of people talk about is boring. So Arthur happens to have a company that has the ability to get subs or do it himself, where you can bore through things, and could you explain what boring is?
The best way I can explain it, it's almost like a bullet, and it shoots underground. So you can run your plumbing. For example, let's say you're trying to run a main connection or a point of connection across a driveway, which we're doing right now. Now, this one, the client's okay. Hey, I don't care if you're pour back. Obviously, the concrete's going to look different. I don't care. I'm trying to save on costs. I don't want to do the boring. No problem. But the boring, what it would do is, instead of cutting into the driveway, we can actually go underneath it. So we can service the underground lines underneath, so we don't have to tamper with the concrete. It's a lot less digging. And cost wise, it could be a little bit more depending on what you're going through, but it could save you a lot of extra dirt that you're digging out as well.
Okay, now this is a good topic, and I'm glad we're discussing it, because when I had my sewer line connected, we're a little bit lower in the back end on our back property than we are. The main house is kind of on a slight little bit of a rise, maybe 18-20 inches. And then it kind of slopes a little bit towards the street and where the sewer main is. And the sewer main was really deep. So when the guys were digging by hand with shovel and pick at the sewer main, they had to have been 6-7 feet deep into and what that does, and again, so try, if you haven't done new construction yet, just imagine that there is these men who are in a trench, digging a trench that starts off maybe 3 feet, then goes to 4 feet, then goes to 5 feet deep, and they ran it for 50 feet. So that's a huge amount of dirt that's getting dug up, being put everywhere, and it's very disruptive. So I was just thinking, oh my God, if they could have bored, that would have really been great. But then my next follow-up is going to be, if you bore, would you have been able to do what I did, put in the sewer, water, and gas lines all layered on top?
Well, I've only done it for water lines a few times. So obviously we don't do our own boring. We have a company that does the boring. But that would be a great question to ask them. Obviously, there's certain things you can't put together. Like, I don't believe you can put your electrical line and gas line in the same trench.
They have to be separated. They have to have some separation. That's for sure. And of course, everything is inspected before it's covered up. So if you're listening and you're worried about anything that we're saying, all of these things are inspected by your local jurisdiction. So, but the boring question was one that fascinated, and thank you for sharing that. And it would be great to see just what they can do with it. The number one thing I think that Arthur is saying is it can save your driveway. You don't have
Yeah.
to get it torn
Save your
up.
concrete, your
Save
flat
it.
work and everything. So yeah, it's not so much designed to just run the whole line that way. But it's more designed for your concrete, is the way I see it.
Okay,
So
perfect.
you save that. Obviously they need to see the lines because they want to make sure you have proper grade. As you mentioned, sometimes you got to dig pretty deep because you've got a long run. And that's one thing when you're getting prices for these ADUs, and especially if you're getting these prices from a square foot, good question to ask the contractor is how much run of plumbing is that including? Because what if you're running 150 linear feet? Is that going to be the same square footage price if you have a clean out right next to where you're doing it? Because that's a whole lot less plumbing involved versus I just took pictures of one, and there's dirt all over the place. There's mounds of dirt because we had to go about 7 feet deep to
Right.
get into the main sewer and trench it approximately 170 linear feet to where the ADU is going to be.
Now
And
that's a big distance, 175 feet.
it's a lot. And so to get to the main all the way to the back of the house where it's at in Rancho is a lot of work. And we had to cut through driveways, and we had to cut through, landings and things like that. It's a serious ordeal. And his ADU is 380 square feet. Which is kind of, it made sense for him financially, I guess, to do it. But that's why I tell people, I mean, just because you're getting okay, it's you tell me 250 a square foot or whatever the square foot they're telling you, but yours is only 380 square feet, and I got to run 170 linear feet to your ADU. That square footage price, you may want to talk to your contractor you're getting that bid from, because I think if you realize maybe what's involved in that, then maybe it's going to be a lot more than you anticipated. So going back to my point, and I mean, I'm just talking about the plumbing at this point, running the plumbing there. That could be a big expense that needs to be looked. And it's constantly being overlooked, I see, by contractors, because they're sticking to the square footage price and they're not doing a site visit or getting their plumber out to do a site visit to see, hey, how am I going to connect? Where are my connecting points? And where are my point of connections to the ADU? And how far is the run? And can I get grade? If you're in an area where you can't get grade, you may need to add a sump pump. We've done a
Which you're
few
right.
injector pumps.
And I think that's the grade is, the slope or the fall, so that gravity can kind of take the wastewater and from where the ADU is, and then it can, again, gravity takes it, moves it to the sewer main. It's okay if you don't have the fall, because you do have these pumps that they use a lot in San Francisco and Northern California, or any sort of a hillside area, that work okay. But just like and they're enclosed, so they're not going to have any sort of big issues. But things like that do need to be serviced from time to time, and it may last you, I don't know, 10-15 years, or am I being optimistic?
It depends on which one you get, and it's usually the pump, the first thing to go. So, it just depends on what you're willing to spend on a good, injector pump. So,
It's the quality is the cost. And I
yep.
think that, and I do want to spend a little bit more time on what you just mentioned, where you talk, which again, we're talking utility connections to the ADU. You have a client, a customer who's building something under 400 square feet. And if a person were looking at just a per square foot cost based on a particular size, that's just a part of the picture.
Yeah.
And
I mean, it, you'd have to put some sort of limitations, and the attention's in the detail, right? So if you're getting a square footage price for your ADU, if I was a homeowner or I was a consumer, I would be asking these type of questions. Well, what kind of run are you doing for my plumbing? Is that including, backfill and repouring? Does that include, let's say you need a panel upgrade or a 100 amp sub panel into your ADU, which is typically required.
right.
There's just detailed questions before you go pen to paper on the prices you're getting before you sign up, because you need to know, you have to be very aware of what you're getting. And I know a lot of people just kind of stick it to, well, he told me he'll give me standardized stuff, He'll build the ADU. This is the square footage price he gave me. And I'm telling you that if you don't ask these detailed questions, you may find out once you give your first deposits or once you give your first draw that this guy's coming back and say, hey, we didn't anticipate this, this, and this.
Right.
I'm going to have to charge you more money. And then you get to the change order stuff and miscommunication. And it goes both ways. You know, I mean, it's not just contractors. Like I said, I have plenty of homeowners that, you know, won't go to Closet World, and now they want this fancy $6,000-7,000 closet build in their closet. And I'm like, well, we didn't talk about that. So
Yeah, no, it is.
um,
You're touching on something that I think is probably one of the most important things to really try to be mindful of when it comes to trying to understand the price of an ADU. And it's very hard for a homeowner who has never done new construction or never done maybe a major remodel on their house to really sort of get in their mind what they need to know. What are the questions? And the vernacular, the lexicon, however you want to kind of say what the words mean and how that general contractor means them are sometimes different. So it's important. And I wish there was a template that was out there that said, and you, he's about to, oh yeah, Arthur has a template. We're going to be able to share that with people. And thank you for that.
I can add to it, but I just wanted, people to, because, the construction, there's so many parts involved. Usually when I'm doing a detailed proposal, I mean, there's 20 something line items for an ADU. So there's just a lot of questions, and, everyone's different and everyone wants their ADU built different. And there's so much customization involved that it's, and again, I'm not trying to harp on guys that do their business with square footage prices, but there's just so much more detail involved. And like you said, how do you know I'm talking to a good contractor? These are the type of detailed questions you should be going over. You should be asked what you want in your bathroom, what you want in your kitchen. There should be, if you want the contractor to pick out your materials, there should be material budgets. If these things aren't being discussed, how valid is the bid and how trustworthy is the person you're working with, feeling that there's not going to be change orders and miscommunication if none of this stuff is being offered and people are willing to sign contracts just on a square footage price.
And I think that a lot of people are kind of pulled into it with the sense that when they ask the question, is this everything? I mean, today I was asking, well, does this include everything? And then in my mind, I'm going through at like 100 miles an hour, all of the hundreds of different things I could then respond back to that person who asked me that question. Is it include everything? And I was like, well, that's impossible to really answer. And as soon as and I didn't say that, but if I were to say it that way, then I'm not trying to be, clever. I'm not trying to sort of dodge the question. I'm just saying it is almost impossible to really answer unless somebody goes and examines your property. And unfortunately for a lot of homeowners, they get very overwhelmed. They get just sort of inundated by all of the things that they're required to do. And so they may just kind of, okay, I feel like I have a understanding that this person is going to do the job the way that I want it done. And you're not going to know until you're $1,000 deposit into it. You got your permits pulled and you've got that first draw issued. And now you're into it, 4, 5, 6 months. And then, oh, by the way, we did not include that. Your solar panels are not included. Let's see, what else would not be included? Big line items. Septic
tanks. I've dealt with septic tank ADUs, so that are undersized. So now you're talking, I mean, that's a $20,000-$30,000 potential item that you may have to consider, because if you're on septic and you're adding bedrooms, and that San Bernardino County bases it on bedrooms, not your bathrooms. Kind of interesting, but I guess they feel the more people in the bedrooms, the larger your septic tank needs to be. And now you got to get percolation tests. You have to upsize it, new leach lines or new seepage pits. Now you got to get precast iron tanks, and that could be a whole other ordeal. I've had that happen. and it's
You don't
something
want to
we,
have a, like you said, $20,000 oops surprise.
yeah, yeah. So that's, I mean, is your contractor asking if you're on public, sewage or not? That's a good question to ask, but how many contractors are asking? I don't know if most contractors, and it's based on your bedrooms. So if you're even just doing a bedroom addition, and you have a 1,200-gallon tank, and now you're adding a bedroom, and now environmental health services is requiring an upsize, congratulations, you just added $20,000-$30,000 of cost to that small room addition you wanted to do. So and
That's
I'm speaking from
amazing.
experience, obviously, but that's a big line item I've seen happen.
It is a tough one. We did have a question from somebody asking about water lines. And if you can answer it, great. If not, we can definitely look into it. And the question was, can a 1-inch water line run a 150 feet on flat land for a single-story ADU?
So the size of the water line is dependent on a few things. Obviously, how many bathrooms are you adding? How many fixtures are you adding? I mean, we've ran, and again, I'm more of a building contractor. But I've done enough plumbing where, a 1-inch fixture may be good. But if you want a clear answer, this is why you have architect plans that have what's called MEP, your mechanical, your electrical, and your plumbing. So, when people ask me, not to dodge the question, but that's more of an engineering question where I would recommend people get an MEP engineer to actually design your ADU on what's possible. So I understand code and what design, and if you ask me, hey, is this amount of wood good for live loads? I'm going to refer you to a structural engineer. I believe, again, don't quote me on it, I believe you should be fine to run 150 linear feet of a 1-inch water line. Actually, we've ran a 100 linear feet for a gazebo. So that would be something, obviously, that'd be part of your plans. And in your plans that tell you, how to run your split system, or if you're running ducts, or how your electrical is going to be, and where your receptacles and switches are going to go, and how it's all connected. That would all be dictated in the plans, which an engineer should do for you.
And if you can talk about, and thank you for that, because a general contractor is going to be deferring to a lot of trades. So they're going to be looking at whether it's going to be a structural engineer, or it's going to be, if you use an architect, they can kind of include all of those things. A licensed a licensed architect is going to build in all of those things to your plan set. Some folks that are doing owner builder are just drawing something on a napkin and they're sending it out to a structural engineer, and they're getting their Title 24 run, and they're using various trades. From what you're seeing with your jobs, how many trades are you typically engaging with in professions?
Well, there's, like I said, usually we have, 10 different specialty trades on the job site all the time, in our builds. I mean, you think about it, you've got roofing, you've got framing, you've got concrete, plumbing, electrical, HVAC, stucco, windows, your glazers, your finished carpentry items, your tile items for your shower, your fabricated, prefabricated countertops, your painters, insulation. There's tons and tons of trades involved in a building process. So, and I mean, I'm just thinking right off the top of my head, I'm sure I missed a few. Flooring, you got your flooring contractors.
You have your countertop fabricators.
Yeah,
I forget
you
what they're
know,
called.
yeah, I mean, the ceramic mosaic C54 contractors, they're the ones that do your tiling and your countertops. Then you've got your plumbing finishes, all your electrical finishes. There's so many trades involved in the ADU. So if you're planning to do owner builder, do it yourself, or trying to save as much money as possible, just be prepared. You're going to be dealing with 10, and I'm speaking in California. I know other
Right.
states now are adapting ADUs. But you deal with 10 to sometimes 15 different specialty trade contractors.
And that's the one thing I do want people to kind of keep in mind is doing an owner builder, I think is probably one of the best ways to save some money on an ADU build. But going into considering acting as an owner builder, keep in mind the amount of time and energy it's going to take to coordinate those 10 plus trades that are there. And then also knowing that you can hire a designer to do your plan, but a designer who does the plan is then going to need additional work for your structural. And then they're going to have all of the electrical and all those things kind of calculated. We have a couple questions that are coming in from Jose, and thank you, Jose, for the question. And his is about electrical calculations for the new code requiring all electric construction
Yeah.
detached ADU. Now, I could very quickly do a sideline political comment about, all electric, which I think is ridiculous.
Yeah, city of Riverside. If you're in the city of Riverside now, they no longer allow gas. So, so all new builds at the city of Riverside now are all electric. And we've done all electric. One thing I've been at length of talking with my electrician. One thing to note are those tankless electric water heaters. Unless someone, and by all means, I'm always about learning. If someone can find one that doesn't require as much juice, the ones we looked at require 4 40 amp breakers into the box for the tankless water heater. So
yeah,
none of them you're putting 106. Let's say you have a 200 panel. You're putting 100. There's no room. You're going to need a 400 amp panel, because I talked to this guy. What was his name? Zach at the city of Riverside. I said, well, how are you going to allow 400 amp panels? And Jose mentioned city of Los Angeles, same thing, because they, not to get political on natural gas or whatever their belief systems are, but that's now something to consider. If your main panel box can't support 160 amps with a tankless water heater, you're going to need to upgrade it.
Yeah, and I can talk about that a little bit. So specifically with a hot water heater to address Jose's question, electric on demand do not meet Title 24. I've not heard of a product out there. I have not seen it anywhere in any conversation throughout the state that a tankless electric hot water heater meets the Title 24 energy efficiency regulations by the state of California. The only thing that does is an electric hot water heat pump. And those equipment pieces are huge and they are noisy. It is the electric hot water heat pump, and I got the quietest one I could find that's in our ADU. Sounds as loud as the mini split condenser for the HVAC system. They're about the same decibel level. And it's louder than a refrigerator. And if you do not insulate your closet for your electric hot water heat pump, you're going to hear it. Now, I thought I did that, but I didn't take into consideration that the vents that are needed on the closet door, and you need a lot of louvers because it moves a lot of air. The sound travels out of that, hits the vinyl fence that's there, and can just reverberates a little bit to these thin windows that we have from my father-in-law's bedroom. And he's like, I hear this buzzing. And I'm like, it's the electric hot water heater. So that's a pain in the ass. Jose, I hope that answers your question about that. Let me see. There's another one here from Becca, and thank you, Becca. Is it unrealistic or problematic to be your own contractor if you have architectural plans so you can hire your own subcontractors? What do you think?
My question to you, Becca, would be what's your knowledge in construction? Because there's levels of execution of the ADU that you need to know. Like, for example, you would need to know a list of things and what to do in order. And if you don't know what the order is, And let's say you pass framing, you put your roof on, your tile roof on. Oh wait, I forgot to run all my rough mechanical, my exhaust and everything. Oh, now the tile roof's on. Well, now you got extra costs in running that because you didn't run it before doing that. You would, the most important thing is, well, there's two things, that and this is the reason why some people rather hire a GC or a licensed contractor. One thing I would recommend to you, Becca, I know some people disagree with this, but I would only hire licensed specialty trade subcontractors. You have a much better chance if someone has a C20 license to do the HVAC right versus a guy that doesn't have it but says he can do HVAC.
And can you drill down on that a little bit more? Because I think that's important for people to understand. When you talk about specialty trades, I mean,
yeah,
I want to say I'm disappointed, and I really wish that more people would know and become familiar with the state of California's contractors website, where you can check licenses. But then what you're talking about are the specific licenses for a trade.
Right. Yeah. So for you guys that want to be do-it-yourselfers, which a lot of people I've met on the forum wanting to do, the best way to do it is obviously, which would require the knowledge you're talking about, but you would want to isolate every individual piece of the ADU puzzle with pricing from individual trade. And the reason I like the individual trade is because if someone is licensed as let's say a C8 concrete contractor, they've obviously gone through the testing and the California codes to know what it takes to do concrete and do it right. And it means they have years of experience actually performing the work. What it also means is they have insurances in place. So, and I'll tell you, the state of California is extremely, extremely aggressive and comes down heavily. We're talking about possible jail time if someone's operating as an unlicensed contractor. But I've seen people on the forums have handyman build their entire garage conversion, which to me is crazy, but good for them.
Oh no, I think it's completely crazy. The one thing, Becca, I want to add to your question, because I think, and I thank you for the question. And she's basically, I'm a fast learner, and she doesn't have a lot of construction knowledge. And so this is not an unfamiliar position for people to be in. And one of the things I would probably offer as a really good advice is to find somebody. You might be able to find maybe a project manager that may be able to do some level of coordination without having to be a full-blown general contractor. But short of that, taking the time to really understand the things that Arthur is talking about, the various trades, but also something, if you haven't heard about it, find out about, is called a Gantt chart. And a Gantt chart is something that what Arthur touched on, that's a sequence of events. And that a Gantt chart basically says you can't put on the roof shingles until the sheathing of the roof has been inspected. And so everything happens in an order, and you're not going to skip the order, because again, you might end up having to open up your drywall to be able to show the plumbing connections. And that's not fun for anybody. So a Gantt chart show the series of steps that are necessary, and it's pretty involved. There are consultants that I know that could build Gantt charts for your individual project. They start anywhere from about $1,500 to $2,500 to be able to have that person do it for you. And it's just something to kind of look at. And the fact that I'm saying Gantt chart, and if you're on social media platforms looking into ADUs, the number of times that I've seen Gantt chart referenced, not by myself, it's on one hand. I'm usually one throwing out the rabbit hole bait. It's like, hi, let's go have a conversation about something. Let's see how much you know.
Yeah. And that's great that you added to that, because and again, I don't know what your budget is, Becca, but what I would recommend, if you do have limited knowledge, you could actually, and here's for the do-it-yourself, I'm gonna save all your do-it-yourself thousands of dollars right now and give you $1 million advice. You can hire a General B licensed contractor, right? Someone who's been involved in building, and you can hire them through if you're in California, you can go on the Contractor State License Board, search for General B contractors and ask them if they offer construction management services. I highly recommend, if you don't have experience building, to hire one to see if they're willing to work, whether it be a contingency based or salary based for your project, or like a day rate, to hire them to be able to watch it, because it's not just all understanding the execution of what comes first and what comes last, but also to check the work. Because if you don't know how to read plans, and you don't know how to read shear wall nailing schedules, or hardware for framing, or what grade you're supposed to be on the exterior of your building, or the grade for your plumbing, you could, I mean, you know, I do like to emphasize the importance of this. This is a major building project. And when that concrete's poured and that drywall is up, and you have a problem, you could cost yourself a lot of money. So it may be worth it. If I could offer any advice of doing it yourself, is it would be very worth the investment to hire a construction manager. And they don't have to be a licensed building contractor, but all the more so if they are, but someone that has experience, that's willing to work with you. And you know, that way you hire out the contractors, but they help you in the process of building and inspecting the work. Because a lot of people think the city inspector, just because they inspect it, means everything's good and everything's peachy keen. That's not the case. So
No, I agree with that. And if anybody's going to want to fast forward, and I'll try to pull this out in something, because you just had probably one of the greatest things. It's like, it is the part of a conversation like this where you could save yourself thousands, if not tens of thousands of dollars, is that go and find somebody that could act as a construction manager and understand what that role would be. It still requires, am I correct, that it still requires a lot more work based on from the homeowner, the property owner, than if they were just to hand it over to the GC and let them take it.
yeah, because now you're calling HVAC contractors, you're getting bids from them. You know, you're detailing the bid to make sure what's included, what's not included. And think of that, you're doing that for your concrete contractor, your plumbing, your drywall. You're going to have to get on the phone. And if you've never called contractors before, there may be a lot of good contractors out there, but they're bad businessmen. And I mean, you have a better chance of reaching ghosts than some of these contractors. They just don't answer the phone. So it is going to require a lot of legwork. But if you're in it to save the money and you're willing to put the sweat equity in, you can find a lot of good contractors doing this and meet your budgets a lot better. But again, do you want to put in that work? Do you want to pay for the construction manager and go through this process on contractors that you're vetting? Because it is going to be hours and hours and hours of work. That's the big question.
You are totally oversimplifying that. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Yeah, I'm going to share my own personal experience where I thought, I've been doing property development. I'm going to find my subs. Well, after I think 2 months, and this is right in the middle of the pandemic. Okay, just qualify this. 2 months trying to find a concrete subcontractor. Couldn't do it. I was calling all my GC people. Do you have one? Nope, they're busy. No. Nope, they're not going to go there. No, they're out in the high desert. They're not going to come into Burbank. They're not going to handle it. That is the one thing that I would probably want to stress to everybody who's watching, listening, is that an owner builder is more difficult in a busy market where general contractors like Arthur are employing them. And that sub is going to want to stay closer to a GC who's keep giving them regular work on a consistent basis, as opposed to maybe not giving Arthur the amount of time and attention just to go over, have this one-off, because the one-off client, the one-off homeowner who's not a builder and who's not a general contractor is going to require, from my perspective, twice the amount of time, because that person is coming at this from the first time. That homeowner is not a GC. So they're asking a lot of questions. They're going to be questioning the price, where that sub, if they're working with a GC, just knows what to expect. So they're much more efficient. So temper yourself, all you owner builders out there, temper yourself that it's going to take an incredible amount of time to identify your subs. Even if somebody gives you a referral, a name or whatever, and if they don't call you back, might need to ask yourself the question, if I'm going to delay my project by 6 months or 8 months, is it worth it to me to try to do it owner builder as opposed to getting a project manager, or the best thing, the easiest thing is to hire a general contractor to do it all?
And that's a really great point, because that is one of my selling points is I have projects all year round. So my plumber does, tons and tons of different projects, kitchen remodels, bathroom remodels. I have all those projects. So there is an incentive for me to hire, specialty trade contractors. But, and then, this is a decision you make yourself that we can't make for you. Is it worth the extra cost to not go through that headache, have someone's license and insurance taking liability? Because a lot of people don't know this. When you hire a general contractor, they don't have to put it in the contract. They are obligated to give you a 10-year latent warranty and a 3-year patent warranty. So if you hire a general contractor in 3 years, you got a leak in the wall, well, he's going to be liable for that. So but that's a decision you have to make. Is it worth the extra, and again, I'm not trying to veer you away from doing it yourself, because it's very rewarding if you get it built at the end. Say, hey, I hired all these guys, I got this built, I got all my inspections passed. And it's, it is a satisfying process, but I don't know what your mental capacity is in terms of how much you want to challenge yourself. And there's a lot of detail and there's a lot of strategy involved in these builds, and there's a lot of money and risk involved. So you make that determination, and you can determine, hey, you know what, I want to try to do this on my own. I'm willing to put that, Dave, I could hear in his voice, because I've been through that. It's daily, it's all the time, and there's going to be guys that don't do things right. You're going to need to get someone else in to get it done right. So
Yes,
and then
it's not
execution.
perfect.
Yeah, and I mean, one thing I always tell people as prep, I know there's people quoting that they can get it done in 2 to 3 months. Do understand this is construction, and it's never a smooth ride. It never is, at least not on my end. There's very few times where it's just a perfect A to Z building process. I mean, just recently I've had like 3 or 4 footing jobs where we couldn't pour concrete because we're going fishing, because we had torrential rainfall,
Yes.
never before
Yes.
seen in California. And I can't put plumbing lines in, I can't pour concrete, I can't even get my footings inspected because and then my jobs are delayed for 2 months. It happens. And you have to be, I do ask people to be appreciative or respectful of the contractor, as long as they're communicating to you. That's what's important. And then the other thing too, just want to touch on, when we talk about cost, there's definitely the construction cost, but a lot of things that don't get talked about is the structure of the company. Is this a company that, is providing porta potties, which are supposed to by OSHA, project managers, do they have office managers, or is this a guy just operating off a cell phone out of his garage? Nothing wrong with that. But obviously, you have to take that into consideration, your price difference. Do you want to call someone at 2 p.m. on a Monday and know you're going to get through because there's someone in the office that's going to answer your call?
Right.
Or are you okay paying less, getting a guy on a cell phone who may, who's out doing work? And again, I'm not discrediting those people. Those people are, probably do really good work.
But it has, and you bring up something that goes straight to a question from Sam. And Sam says, is it unrealistic to expect a contractor to work on your job exclusively if the work can be done nearly every day? I have my answer to that. I want to hear yours.
Is it unrealistic to expect a contractor to work on your job exclusively? Meaning if he has other projects, look, how much do you want this guy? That's the first question, right? Because my business, I have a certain degree of threshold of, hey, I'm too busy, I'll get back to you later. And I've let go of good teams that have worked for me because they're too busy. So I do expect, a level of dedication on my jobs because my clients expect it of me. So I don't want to tell a client, hey, I'm 3 weeks out because my baseboard guy doesn't want to go to the job site for 3 weeks because he's booked up. That's where it comes down to. I mean, that comes down to expecting, first of all, managing expectations. That's what I was trying to say, with the contractor and what you expect and what he has availability for. But it depends on the project. I mean, there is a ratio, I believe, that the smaller the project, the harder it's going to be to find someone that's going to be more motivated and willing to be dedicated to your project. I mean, people call me all the time, just want some drywall repaired, and I respectfully turn that down. It's just not worth it to us. So it depends on the size of the project. I don't really have a good answer. I'm curious what Dave's answer is, but I think, he may have something I probably align with what he thinks, but, it's expectations as far as I'm concerned.
Well, first of all, I think it's great. We're getting wonderful, participation with the questions, and these are excellent questions. So thank you, everybody. If you're thinking about putting in a question, you're not sure about it, just do it. There's everything that may not help just yourself. It could help other people that are here with us live or are going to be watching or listening to this in the future. So my answer to that question is no, you cannot expect them to do it just for yourself and have it just there, unless you are a property developer that is doing, I don't know, 7 to 8 full build projects a year, and you're doing tens of millions of dollars of investments, and you just keep that person employed. That's not realistic. We're talking about accessory dwelling units and a homeowner going, I want to reduce the impact. I want to cut it down. If you're looking for a contractor and that is a qualifying concern, I think that you're setting yourself up for huge, gigantic disappointments. One, they're going to lie to you and say that they'll do it exclusively. They won't. And you'll be setting yourself up for just massive frustration. A busy general contractor that has the overhead, that has to support an overhead, is going to be working on multiple jobs. So there's probably a whiteboard in Arthur's office that has all the jobs that he's working on. And they're tracking, the whole office is tracking them as they go through their progress. He's pointing to it now. I knew it. So it's going through the progress, and jobs are continually being added to that. And so then they are building in a schedule, and they're going to say, okay, this is when we're going to start. We're going to start doing the site demo or the site prep. We're going to start doing trenching and then this is something that, general contractors do. Their getting the subs kind of lined up. So they're very likely going to be there, at least, the trenching folks are going to be there until the job's done. And then there may be a break while maybe the footings guy comes out and does everything for the concrete slab. And then they're going to come back and they're going to make sure they have all the metals. Because when the metals are put in for the concrete foundation, they have to wait for that to be inspected. So you're going to get these breaks. And you're going to get these pauses, but to have it, and this goes along with a lot of different things that that Arthur and I have been touching on, to have some sort of, and I apologize for the way this is going to come across, unrealistic expectation. It is unrealistic to expect that they will do that for you exclusively, because that person, that contractor, and this is why I say that, it is because that contractor is then going to have to find another job. And if they don't have another job, that means that his employees are not going to get paid. They need to get paid, and they need to get paid on a regular basis, or that general contractor will lose them to somebody that will get them paid on a regular basis.
Yeah, and I think that's a great point, because the reality is good contractors are busy. That's the truth. And that's kind of the fight I have. I try to offer more jobs in exchange for a little bit more dedication. But so you've got to make the determination, is it okay for you to deal with a contractor that may be a little bit difficult to get a hold of, maybe a little bit difficult getting you on schedule, but he does good work? My opinion is that's always worth it. If your ADU takes 8-9 months to get built, but it gets built well and structured, and you go to bed at night that those plumbing lines aren't going to leak, and the wire, your electrical is ran properly, the proper Romex 12.2s, and you're not going to have shortages at the end of the night because you hired a good electrician and you paid and you understand he's busy. in my opinion, that's always worth it. And understanding that, and and this is just my personal opinion, is be lenient with the time frames of your contractors. Okay, if now they're not answering your phone call and they're just not returning your phone calls, that's a
Yeah,
different
that's
story.
different. Yeah.
Different story. But if they're 2 weeks out, 3 weeks out, but they're an awesome tiler, I'm waiting personally, So, again, that's a decision you have to make. Oh, if dedication and fast and timely is what you want, and you find that guy that's readily available, is his work going to be, good if he's always available? I
Right.
don't know.
And I tried to touch on that earlier, because if there's somebody's going to be available like that, so a good contractor, a good subs, they're in demand, particularly now. We got another question, a really good question from Becca, that she specifically wanted to ask you. Aren't all ADU builds smaller? Aren't they just
Let
small?
me well, I mean, they can go up to 1,200 square feet, which is the size of some houses. But let me give you guys another $1 million, thing free of charge. I'll offer you guys this. It's relative to the contractor you're hiring. Now, you call big business plumbing company and you're talking to the secretary and you're talking to the service techs and all that. Is a 300 square foot ADU something they're gonna, be excited about? Maybe not. Now, you talk about owner operated, operates off his cell phone as a licensed subcontractor, probably gives better pricing because he doesn't have all that overhead. And to him, running an HVAC for two-zone system in an ADU, or mom and pop framers, they're out there. They'll frame 400. That to them, that's that's food on the table. So it's relative to who you're talking to. Yeah, you talk to Izzy at Next Gen Air. He's not going to want to do small HVAC projects.
Yeah.
But you talk to licenses under someone's personal name,
Right.
and they just do their own work. And again, I love those guys, because that's where we get most of our guys from, is those independent operating people that do really good work, but they're not business people, and then we keep them busy. And to them, framing a 300 square foot ADU is substantial for the small framer company. Stuccoing a house is substantial for the guy who does his own work. So it's, so it depends. Your question is that too small of a job? Now you call me and say, hey, I got a drywall that needs to be repaired in the bathroom. Yeah, that to me, relative to me, that's not a job I would tackle. Relative to a handyman, all day long, he'll take that job.
So I want to put a pin in the handyman thing, because I want to cover that specifically, why I do not recommend it. And I think that there is a certain amount of risk that is involved. And I'm talking about a much more involved process. And a lot of people these days do just a handyman is going to be fine and whatever. But there are some certain risks, and I want to touch on that. But before I do, Francine, thank you very much for your question about garage conversions. And Arthur, if you can kind of field this one. Francine was asking, how much do you think a garage conversion to ADU owner builder would save? Is it even worth the savings to do it yourself? And I'm imagining Francine means as an owner builder to do that garage conversion.
I'm sorry, I'm answering all these questions the same way. It's relative to the person. How much you can save. I mean, I've seen people build garage conversions for half the cost, or 30%. Most GCs I'd say are about 20-30% above cost. So, some a little bit more. Again, it depends on the structure of the company. As I talked about, some companies have a little bit more overhead. They're investing in marketing. They have managers in the field. They have managers in the office, permit runners. Their company has a lot more involved to build a more effective company. But my question would be to you is, how worth it is it to you, the things we discussed about getting subcontractors, doing the scheduling your own contractors, getting the bids, dealing with the city inspectors, doing all this stuff on your own, which is quite a bit of work to save the money. And that's not a question I can answer for you. That's something you got to ask yourself, because it's a tremendous amount of work to basically, I mean, to me personally, do I want to go through the process of changing my own oil? And I know this is on a smaller scale, or would I rather just go to my dealer and, pay the money and have it done? For me personally, I'd rather go to the dealer, and that's my personal opinion. Would I get satisfaction out of doing my own oil changes? I just don't want to go through the headache, but, you may have different, mental capacities for something like this and have the energy and have the time. And, that's why I got into this industry, is because I enjoy the challenge, for me personally. So you may have a similar mentality. You may be the kind of person that says, yeah, I want to learn this. This is a big, challenging project. I want to find my own guys. I want to deal with my own inspectors. I want to learn the process of doing my own builds. I want to manage my own job and do my own research. And it's noble. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. It's noble for you to do. But I tell people this is a major construction project. And if you close those walls up and something wasn't done right, or you did things in the wrong order, or the inspector comes back and makes you want to rip stuff down because you missed inspections, you may have to be ready for that. So, hopefully it's hard for me to just say, yes, it's a good idea to save money, or no, it's, hire it out and not worry about it. It's a question everyone on this call has to answer. And I don't have an answer for that for you. I can just tell you there is quite a bit involved, and there is a ton involved in getting the right contractors, inspections, executing the building process, and dealing with the headaches, because there's always going to be problems.
Well, what you just said is a great commercial for a contracting vetting service that at least one of the principals was on with us a moment ago, because it talks about how the difficulties of those. So I want to add something on to that garage conversion question, because a lot of the things that I've seen happening are there's garage conversions, and then there's garage conversions. There's a garage conversion on a newer build, home, that the foundation system, the concrete pad that it's on, may be attached to the primary. So odds are that the footings of that concrete slab that compose the garage are good enough that they don't need to be upgraded. And that's where you can save a lot of money and probably have the least expensive garage conversion ADU on the market. And I think that that's where a lot of people were touting these sub $100,000 prices for a garage conversion, is because they didn't have to sister the 2x4s of the existing walls with new lumber. And if you don't know what that means, I'm sorry, you got a long way to go. So you do, because if you have, like in Burbank, a lot of detached garages that have very thin concrete slabs, that the lumber is not properly spaced. It has no structural stability to it. And you're basically having disassemble that entire garage, leaving ridiculous amounts of pre-existing lumber suspended with new lumber, which is called the sistering. They're marrying them together. And while they can excavate out the portions of the concrete slab that they're going to need to replace with brand new concrete. So that kind of a garage conversion is anywhere from, I'd say, 150 to 200,000 for that garage conversion.
Yep.
For a garage conversion that is, you do not have to go to that extent, what would you say, Arthur? Under 100?
It depends. I've seen some that are also, I don't know if anyone's familiar with the term post-tension slabs, like in Eastvale. And that gets a little tricky, because you need an x-ray tech and things like that. And even if it's you could get it built for under 100 grand with a GC, depending on how well structured and engineered it is. And that's why, as I said, you want to get an accurate cost, you need engineer plans so we can see what's involved. But yes, obviously, if I'm doing one in Inglewood and the garage was built in 1930s, I know that thing's going to be problems.
Yes.
I'm saying that from experience, because I've had some that were so bad, we basically had to gut out the entire concrete, redo the footings, and re-pour and re-shear and shear the entire outside and strip the stucco.
And that's not to say that you shouldn't do it, because as most everybody, I hope, knows, that detached garages that are on property lines do not need to be moved. Now, if you're building within the existing footprint, you could be right on the property line and you don't have to move off of it. If you're going to add square footage, Yes, that's going to have to abide by the 4-foot setbacks unless there's some sort of an additional prescriptive easement. And that's another question. And all of those are all things you need to look at. So, and I'm happy that and glad that we're getting the garage conversion questions, because that's the number one type of ADU that's being built in the state of California, according to the Turner Center out of Berkeley, are garage conversions. Who are they being built for? Family members. And so not necessarily the time or place to talk about this, but I want to kind of throw it out there to people. Aging in place is covered on the AARP website. There are certain things as you get older for your parents, your mom, your dad, or somebody else who might be elderly, deal with things differently. So aging in place is a topic that you really should spend some time looking at. And again, AARP has a great section on their website, and it's free to that. Becca, again, you get the award for asking some of the best questions. So thank you again. Would most contractors, would contractors object to owners suggesting or requesting certain subcontractors? Oh, and I know the answer to that one, but go ahead, Arthur.
Look, if you've got it, if I'm doing an ADU and I got this HVAC guy and he's awesome and I want to use him, cool. But again, he's liable for his own work. Dave may feel different. He's like, no, I don't want to use your recommended. Well, we'll find out when he answers. But look, if you use your own roofer because he's top notch and good, and I'll take that off the bid, no problem. And that thing starts leaking, then you know that he's fully responsible for us. And I mean, my attorney's drafted my contract in a way where, you know, something outside of our control, outside of our work happens, you know, obviously they're going to be fully liable. Like I said, I would be open to that if you have a suggested contractor, but if you want to use your suggested contractor for any trade or any CSI code of the building process, you know, we just need to set, you know, hey, if you want to use your guys, use them at your own risk.
Yeah, proper expectations.
Yeah. I know some contractors are pretty strict and say, no, it's my guys or nothing. But I don't, what do you think, Dave? Do you feel the same way?
Yeah, no, I love these. I love these questions. And again, really great. Really appreciate the participation. This has been fantastic. My perspective on this is depending on the size of the contractor. They are, as I mentioned, and Arthur was pointing to his job board that he has in his office. They are coordinating and scheduling all of the various aspects of that build. They're following the progression according to the Gantt chart. This has to be done, then that. And they're having to put in that sub that they have a relationship with, that they know and have a full proper expectation that they're going to show up. And they're going to do it when they say they're going to do it, and they don't have to have their hands held. You can, and I think, Arthur, that's really commendable that you're saying, yeah, I'd do it. But you now put the entire build process on hold. It stops from Arthur's perspective, he's going to stop scheduling everything else until your contractor gets done. And then when you say that they're done, he's probably going to come over to see that it was done right. But he's going to also have that contract from his attorney that says if there's any problem, no harm, no foul for him. It's their responsibility. So he's going to have to then start up to do the rest of the job. It is not something that I would recommend unless you do it this way. And we haven't talked about it, but it's a great segue to it, where with the prefab panel kits that I've worked with and that I talk to clients about and customers, is that another great way to be able to save cost is that you can combine and use both a fully licensed, insured general contractor, and you can act as an owner builder. And this is the way that would work. And I really want to get Arthur's thoughts on this. The general is going to do the utility connections. They're trenching and connecting the really critical components, the water, the sewer lines, the electrical, critically important. They're going to be digging the footings and having the concrete foundation poured. Again, critical, because all of your framing and lumber has to line up with the tie-down bolts. So his framers are going to come in and frame it up. They're going to be doing the roof truss system. They're going to get that all finished. And then they're going to go and do the roughs. They're going to do the plumbing, the electrical, the waste lines, the vent lines, all of those parts that are going to be, ready to be closed up, and then stop. Because from there, as Becca's asking some good questions, you could have somebody come in and then finish the rest of the ADU build. So the really critical, and there are a lot of critical, but some of the most critical have already been done by the GC. He's now done. He goes on his way. And then you'd be left finishing the the insulation, the drywall, the cabinets, the countertops, the flooring, and the HVAC systems. And then because you want, what I'm suggesting is that you ask the general contractor to do a certain amount and then stop, and they're done, and you take the rest of it. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, and actually we've gotten calls for that before, and I'm okay doing that. Yeah. So if you want me to run all your underground plumbing and run all your concrete and everything and frame everything up, and then you come in and do what you want. I think for the most part, I don't think that's a bad idea. The only challenge I could see with something like that is, let's say I'm just responsible for the underground plumbing, and you want to come in there and run all your roughs and things like that. And let's say down the road, something happens to your plumbing. Well, whose fault is it? Is it the underground? Is it the rough? And that could be hard to determine and could put, myself in a lot of risk. Like I said, it's,
and you're not like you did to suggest that. You're just saying that it could be done, but it's not a suggestion.
yeah. I mean, if you're this is my opinion. If you're hiring a general contractor to do it, unless there's just a really, really good reason you want to use a specific guy for a specific trade, I always recommend you have the contractor do everything. I don't think saving money is a good enough reason. And I understand people have budgets, but if the contractor is going to take full liability, he's got the umbrella insurance, he's got the $1 million policy, and he's covering everything from ground up. I mean, again, unless you just like, hey, I really like this flooring guy, I want to use this flooring guy, I'm okay with that. I mean, me personally, I mean, again, I don't speak for everyone. But yes, if you have a guy, I mean, I've done it before, like, hey, this guy's an amazing flooring guy, flooring contractor. I'm going to use him to do the floors, but I want you to do everything else. I don't have an issue with it. But if you have me do just the roughs, it depends on what you're having me do. But yes, if I'm handling all roughs from start to finish, and then you handle all the finishes and all my stuff passes inspection, that's all you want us as a company to do, it's something we would entertain. Yeah.
And that's what I would suggest. You don't want to have any part of the utility connection, which is the point I'm trying to make. It is my recommendation not to have any part of that not done completely by one person. So that means you're bringing your water lines out, you're bringing all your vent lines, you're bringing all of the sewer lines are all there, and all the other people, the subs that you're going to be hiring, are just connecting to them. They're not having to build out any of that infrastructure, because you don't want to have a problem with that. And I think it's just something to kind of keep in mind. Arthur is being very generous to say that he would entertain that. The majority of contractors that I talk to don't, because it derails their project and it takes time. So that means that Arthur is much more involved, invested, and he probably has a much more hands-on approach than a lot of people do. So don't be surprised if someone says no to that. Arthur is being, very generous with his time. The one thing I want to that I put a pin in and want to kind of come back to, because I know that we're getting close to our 90-minute mark here, and it's because time is going by so quickly, and goodness gracious, is handyman. Handyman is one of my biggest little thing that was big, not big. It's where a homeowner, property owner, both open themselves up to a tremendous amount of risk because of the lack of insurance. So a handyman they can only, I said, like $500 or $450.
500. Yep.
So that means the value of the work that handyman is going to do has to be below $500. If this person who is unlicensed charged the property owner more than $500, he has then violated state law.
Yeah, it falls under discouragement at that point.
So a lot of people do it. I understand it. I see it. Things are through the roof, crazy expensive with COVID and inflation. It's just ridiculous. But the other side of the coin, which very few people talk about, and I see it on a regular basis, is what happens if that person gets hurt. So if that worker gets hurt on your property, okay, so just take a second. That person gets hurt on your property. That person is now going to file a workers' comp claim. And my wife happens to be a workers' comp attorney. She was doing a deposition just a few hours ago from her computer up in the front office. And so what workers' comp does is it means it covers all of those uninsured workers who get hurt on a job. And that means that they're going to get paid for their medical. They're going to get paid for their disability. Guess who gets to pay for that if you are hiring an unlicensed, uninsured worker? You do, the homeowner. And what does your homeowner's insurance say about that? How about looking that up? Look up what your homeowner's insurance policy says if you have a $250 claim because your worker just fell off of a ladder and broke their hip, back, or neck. They could be permanently disabled. And so your insurance is not going to be covered. You're going to cover that. And guess where that's money going to come from? Probably the equity out of your house, because their attorneys are going to demand it. So I don't want to pay all doom and gloom, but there's a reason why being a licensed bonded contractor in the state of California has a huge disparity between that handyman. It's because it's so expensive to be able to operate and to be licensed in the state. It's because of all of the unlicensed claims that are being put to employers, to homeowners across the board. So the risk is not, oh, he might not do it the right way. There might be a mistake I have to fix. No, it is you lose your home, you lose a car, and you're just going to be obligated to pay tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars if that person were to hurt themselves. You can take the risk, and that's great if it's a family member and you know them, but still ask yourself the question, is it worth it? So I just want to get on my handyman soapbox just for a minute, Arthur. So thank you for letting me do that.
Well, that's why the penalties for hiring unlicensed subcontractors is extremely heavy against unlicensed contractors. In fact, like I mentioned before, they have offered jail time before. So it is very serious in the state of California. And again, if not only that, the repercussions if they get injured, but if they mess up your job, you have no recourse. You have zero. With a contractor, they have insurances to cover that. And it's not just the project. These garage conversions, they're attached to the house, they damage parts of your house. You have no recourse with them besides a civil case. And what if they don't have any assets? Well, you're going to be wasting your time going to court. So yes, if there's one thing that most people would highly recommend is you want to hire licensed contractors, but you also, because he knows this, because because the workers' comp division, just because you're a licensed contractor doesn't mean you have workers' comp. You can claim exempt as a licensed contractor. And if someone's claiming exempt as a licensed contractor, and again, this is to owner builders too, are they bringing employees to the job site? Because if they claim exempt from workers' comp and they bring a helper to wet saw cut a countertop and cuts his fingers off, guess who's paying the bill? You
Homeowner.
are.
Yeah.
You are. So I can only heavily advise so much. People are going to do what people are going to do and say, oh, I know this guy and I've worked with him before and I've never had issues. It doesn't take more than one. I'll tell you that.
It doesn't. And I think that's unfortunate. And Arthur is again touching on something that I want to give a little bit more attention to, which is what he just said about the contractor who's claiming exemption, meaning that he's the sole employer or sole proprietor, correct? It's just him. He doesn't have any employees with him or named under him and has that workers' comp component of the coverage. And yes, this is an obscure topic, but it's a really critical one. And it's been something that you need to look at. Talk to your insurance provider, your homeowner's insurance. This goes to Becca's most recent question, which is, can't I just have insurance that covers an unlicensed worker? No, you can't. It is specifically stated that if a person is doing a certain amount of work, they need to be licensed, bonded, and insured. You cannot hire an unskilled handyman to do something and your insurance and cover it. There are going to be clauses. And again, I encourage you to contact your homeowner's insurance provider to ask them specifically that question. What happens if I have somebody doing X, Y, and Z on my property and they hurt themselves? Well, and then pay very close attention to what they say, because it's really critical. Again, you need to protect your family. You need to protect your property. The the other part of this that I think is really important, and I want to touch on it as we get close to the 90-minute mark, is builder's risk insurance. And with that, additionally insured certificates of liability. So working with general contractors, it is not a hard question, and it's something that everybody should do, is to ask for copies of their insurance. And if you want to be named, and 10% of the people that work with GCs ask this, is to be named as an additional certificate holder to their insurance policy. And then that's one. Number two is builder's risk. Not every homeowner's insurance policy offers builder's risk, but you need to look at that as well, because it should cover the amount of time, for the period of time that work is being done on your property. Thoughts or comments?
Yeah. I mean, there's nothing I can almost add that doesn't go without saying how important it is to hire a licensed contractor for a major project like this, and who you hire, because I know a lot of times these groups, it's all about the budget and the pricing, and you just can't put a price tag on having the security of knowing that the people on your house, if they're employees, they're covered under workers' comp, or if they're contractors, they're licensed contractors doing the work. Again, I can't sit here and tell someone, hey, you use this guy for years and he's done a great job, he doesn't have a license, don't use him. All I can do is educate people on what the ramifications are, just like Dave did, and mention the issues that can come about. And like I said, it just takes one, and that's it, and you're done. So I mean, that's our business policy. If you're going to do some major project, you need to have a specialty license for the trade that you're doing. Like I said, a handyman's great. You need to touch up a wall, you need to add a baseboard somewhere, cool. As long as it's under $500 worth of work, you're within code. But I mean, I've talked to my attorney that specializes in construction contracting attorney, and this is for any general contractors that are on this call too. So she had a case. Guy was building a house, complete custom house, licensed contractors. The guy that did all the casings, the baseboard, and the doors was unlicensed. The person found out about this because he had other issues with the contractors. So he ended up suing the contractor because the contractor hired that unlicensed subcontractor just for the baseboards and doors, fell under something called discouragement. He had to refund 100% of the money to the client. That's how serious unlicensed contractors are when it gets to the attorney generals, the contractors board, and even the DOJ. It's so severe. I believe if you have multiple offenses, not only you would lose your license, but you would serve jail time. Again, the whole purpose of not only having a license too is the person's background checked. Most people don't want people with criminal records running around their house, and that ensures you, if they have a license, they've been background checked and passed that as well.
And you can have an ability to put in a complaint, and there's a lot more kind of follow up with it too. So with the few minutes that we have left, I want to kind of do a little bit of promo about the ADU University, and then also about what his company does. So we've been doing, this is our 22nd, I think, 23rd webinar that we've done since 2022. And one of the reasons that I opened up the ADU University, and we are now really getting that going. We want to invite people to check it out. We're going to be doing workshops the second and the fourth Saturdays from 9 to 11. So anybody wants to come sign up. First, you have a first 14-day trial, and it's going to be free. You also have access to the library of all of our webinars that we've done, and I'm trying to cover every topic that you could imagine. And it's also going to be where, once we build out the next component of the university, is where we're going to have references and referrals for vetted providers, such as Arthur. So it's where you can know that if you're going to be looking at somebody, we've had a conversation, we've had the deep dive, and we understand that they have the capabilities to do that. And I will be putting it into the chat for the link And while I'm doing that, Arthur, can you just share with people what it is you are focusing on now, and what your business is, and who is a really good client for you?
Well, I mean, I do a lot of, we're actually transitioning into development. So that is something we do. I mean, I'm a general contractor by trade. So, I've always, done kitchen remodels, bathroom remodels. If you're in the Rancho area, go to Paul Martin's. We just did the extension to the restaurant. So, um, my specialty though, is I do like helping out with the ADUs and the garage conversions. I love answering questions. So like if you invited me back in, I'd be happy to, you know, engage and answer any questions and help people out, because it's a dangerous industry. I mean, there's a lot of
Yes, it
bad
is.
people out there. And I just got to say this, it's not just on the contracting side too. There's unscrupulous clients, it's not just bad contractors. Yes, there are some bad contractors, but there are some unscrupulous clients too, and some we have to chase down for money. But yeah, I specialize in anything building. I'm always been very passionate about the attention to detail, the codes and the laws and the repercussions for not following them. So I'm all about details, so I've had people send me their contracts, say, hey, what would you add? What'd you take? Laws on draws, and hey, like, hey, this guy shouldn't take a draw till materials are delivered or services are rendered, and that's what I'm really passionate about. Obviously we're planning to move more into development and build ground ups, but I love the ADU space. I love the garage conversion. I think it's a challenging space, and I'm always open to help out and be host or be a guest and answer any questions regarding contract details, the execution of a project, and all that.
Thank you. And I can't stress that enough, that somebody can understand what a contract should have, what a bid should have, even if you're spending, $1,000 or $2,000, to really have somebody analyze that who has the experience, and they can kind of call out the deficiencies. It is worth it. It is not a $200-300 thing. Somebody like Arthur, who has spent, years and years, getting good at his trade and his craft, that can see those things very quickly, is going to be worth it to you, because we face it. If you're not in his chair and doing what he does, you don't see things the way that a general contractor does.
It's
So
so important. It's so important, because when someone just puts on the contract remodel bathroom, and there's like, okay, well, I mean, are we building a bench? Is there quarter shelves? Is frameless shower door? I
zero
mean,
edge.
I've seen these contracts, and there's just, and some of them don't even have the necessary clauses like the lien disclosure and things like that. I mean, I've seen all sorts of stuff. So I can vouch that investing money to scrutinize a contract, to make sure it is detailed in a way that not only has all the executable clauses and dates and all that, but the details of the scope of work and the draw schedule, making sure that's right, that is absolutely worth every penny, I can say. So
And
yeah.
I cannot emphasize that enough, because I felt for the person who posted recently on a social media page. Was it wrong of me to have expected that they put a bathroom vanity mirror in, and that there would be a clothes rod in the closet? And I just kind of felt for them, and I'm like, oh, because that they are where hundreds of people have been, which is like, I thought that in the closet you'd have a clothes rod, and that above the sink in the bathroom I'd have a mirror, I guess. So things like that are not uncommon to be overlooked, and I think it's important that you do. I want to thank you very much, Arthur, for your time. Really, again, the hour and a half just kind of flew by, and I still have questions that I've written down, but I want to be, again, respectful, so you can get to your day and everybody else can get to their day. Again, if you want to check these things out, come to the ADU University, sign up for just to get on campus. And we welcome you to participate in our subscription side, where you can come to our live workshops and be able to probably interact with people like Arthur and other industry experts as we answer any question that you might have. So to everybody, have a wonderful rest of your day, and we'll talk to you all soon.
Thanks for having me.
All right,
Hope
you're
to be
welcome.
on again.
Okay, bye-bye.
Take care.